But there were some other games and some other results that do feel like they are worth monitoring and worth mentioning that happened over the course of the weekend in college hoops. The first one, it's a game that, to be blunt, if you had asked me on Friday, Torres, do you plan on talking about this game on Monday's show? Do you think it'll be a topic? I probably would have said, nah, probably not. The game I'm talking about, Kentucky at Arkansas. Kentucky enters as a 4-point underdog in the Betfred Sportsbook. And frankly, I thought it should have been a 20-point underdog because Kentucky was coming in, remember, without their starting point guard, Cason Wallace, without their backup point guard, Sahvir Wheeler, who spent most of the season actually as a starter, with CJ Frederick, their, kind of role-playing guard, limited because of fractured ribs. So if I just forget any team, it could be any team, but if I told you no point guard, no backup point guard, maybe your third best ball handler limited with cracked ribs, what would you have said? It doesn't have to be Kentucky. It doesn't have to be the school coach by a Hall of Famer. You would have said, yeah, that team's not winning. Well, instead, Kentucky went into Bud Walton Arena, and in one of the most shocking results of the season, Kentucky walks out with an 88-79 win. Couple thoughts here. One, gotta say, it is a tough, quiet, exhausting night for the John Calipari's gotta go. John Calipari is the worst coach in the history of the world. Haters. So let's get into it. Let's discuss. Before I get into it, I already know what some of you are thinking. Torres, address the elephant in the room. Torres, the referees were terrible. Torres, Oscar Tshiebwe could have been ejected within the first few minutes because of a big elbow early in the game. Devo Davis from Arkansas did get ejected early in the game. The refs were terrible. The refs ruined everything. Blame the refs, blame the refs, blame the refs. Well, as I always say on this show, two things in life can be true. The refs, they were not good. As I said, Oscar Tshiebwe could have been ejected. Devo Davis was ejected. I don't think the second technical warranted ejection. But we also can't blame the refs. They're not the reason that Arkansas lost. First off, the refereeing balanced itself out by the end. Oscar Tshiebwe fouled out in 26 minutes of play for Kentucky. Damian Collins, how about this, fouled out in 6 minutes of play for Kentucky. Arkansas ended up with more foul shots. The personal fouls were even. And also, it's worth noting, Arkansas missed like 15 or 16 layups in this game. I don't have the exact number, but it was way too many. So the bottom line is we can sit here and say the refs were not great, but the refs were not what cost Arkansas this game. And instead, Kentucky walked into Arkansas's home venue and earned that win. How did they get it? To me, this game and this win comes for three reasons. First off, Antonio Reeves, my man, have yourself a night, okay? Antonio Reeves in this game was unbelievable. I would argue one of the best performances that I have seen all season long in college basketball. Antonio Reeves finishes with 37 points. In a game where he had no point guard to set him up, Antonio Reeves finishes shooting 12 of 17 from the field. 12 of 17 from the field. What's wild is he's kind of known as a three-point shooter. He only went 2 for 4 from the 3-point line, 11 for 11 from the free throw line. And so in a game where you don't have your point guard, your backup point guard, another ball handler, so much was put on Antonio Reeves' plate, and he had to be great. Credit to him for stepping up in this big moment. This is why, as a transfer, he came from Illinois State. This is why you come to a place like Kentucky to play in games like this. And Antonio Reeves, when his team needed him, played the game of his life, or certainly the game of his career in a Kentucky uniform. The second reason Kentucky won, how about my boy Jacob Toppin? Okay, Toppin and Torres have taken a lot of arrows together because in the preseason, Kentucky had a foreign tour in the Bahamas, and Jacob Toppin played like an All-American in that game. And at the time, I said Jacob Toppin is going to be an All-American. He is going to be a first-round pick, and he's going to be All-SEC. Well, obviously, it has not worked out, but it's also worth noting that Jacob Toppin was not only phenomenal on Saturday, he's been phenomenal most of the second half of the year. Last 14 games, Jacob Toppin has scored double figures in 13 of those games. And again, in a game with no ball handler at 6'10", Jacob Toppin was the primary ball handler and primary playmaker for the Kentucky Wildcats. He was the guy that was setting everything up. He was the guy that was defending the other team's best wing players and played 38 minutes and did not miss a beat. What I love even more about Jacob Toppin, and I talked about this a little bit on Twitter with the Alabama-Texas A&M game. What I love about Jacob Toppin and what I respect about Jacob Toppin is how he has evolved as a leader this season. Early in the year, he looked lost, he looked confused, he looked overwhelmed, he looked whatever. And maybe it's because there were people, guys like me, girls like me, whatever, that put too much pressure on him. I vividly remember the Missouri game. He comes down for a rebound. That dude, Trey Gilliamon, gets in his face, shoves him, and Jacob Toppin doesn't know what to do. Well, on Saturday, I saw a veteran, I saw a leader, I saw a guy that was kind of bringing the team together, getting them in huddles, keeping them calm when things were going bad. I just want to give this kid credit. I don't know what the future holds. I think he has a bright NBA future. But as a veteran on this team, he has been through so much. He went through that COVID year where Kentucky finished 11-15 with BJ Boston and Devin Askew. Names no Kentucky fan wants to hear again. He was part of last year's team that lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament. He was part of a team that everybody, including myself, I'm not perfect, left for dead. And he has elevated his game late and made sure that in his senior year, if this is his senior year, because he has an extra year because of COVID like everybody else does, that he ain't going down like a punk. And then finally, I want to give credit to somebody else. And I know it's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, even in big blue country. How about we give some credit to John Calipari, okay? And I know everybody wants to blame John Calipari for everything. And I'll just say, listen, to be clear, I'm not saying that this guy deserves some medal of whatever for going on the road and winning a road game against a beat-up Arkansas team, whatever. This isn't a 16 beating a 1. This isn't a UMBC beating a Virginia. But at the same time, down your starting point guard, down your backup point guard, down your best, maybe your third best ball handler is limited because of those fractured ribs. Calipari had one of his best days, I believe, as the Kentucky head coach. They had no shot and no reason to win that game, but he put together a good game plan. He empowered his players. He went to the 2-3 zone, which kind of threw Arkansas for a loop in the second half. He managed his bench when he needed to. He did it largely without Oscar Tshiebwe. And so this guy, I just want to say, again, I'm not saying he deserves National Coach of the Year because he beat Arkansas. But what I am saying is this guy takes so many arrows from everybody. He takes arrows from the national, like I was blown away when Kentucky lost on Wednesday or Thursday, whenever they played Vanderbilt. How many people in the media who are paid to cover college basketball just crushed Calipari without acknowledging that Cason Wallace, his best NBA prospect, his point guard, was not available for the second half. Like, I'm sorry, but you take out Cason Wallace from Kentucky, Marcus Sasser from Houston, Kendrick Davis from Memphis, whoever. You take out a team starting point guard, they're going to struggle. They did on Wednesday. They adjusted, and he won this game. It was unbelievable. This guy takes so much heat for everything, and this year more than any, I don't buy the narrative. Like, I just can't get – I don't think he was great. I don't think he was perfect in November and December. I think he was too stubborn on Sahvir Wheeler. I get that. But at the same time, this is the bottom line with Kentucky. I looked this up because I was interested. Kentucky really has, I would argue, probably 7 players that are really consistent players, okay? Oscar Tshiebwe, Antonio Reeves, Cason Wallace, those are 3. Chris Livingston is 4. CJ Frederick is 5. Sahvir Wheeler is 6. And Jacob Toppin is 7. And then there's other guys who have played a lot of Duthier or whatever. But of their top 7 guys, here's kind of a crazy stat. Only 2 of them have played the entire season without missing a game. Jacob Toppin missed time. Cason Wallace is out right now. Sahvir Wheeler's out right now. CJ Frederick is banged up. Oscar Tshiebwe missed a game earlier this year, and he, of course, had surgery just a few weeks before the season on his knee. And so I bring it up because every single game, it's something new. Somebody's out. Somebody's back. Somebody's this. Somebody's that. Somebody's in a new role. We got to figure this out. We got to figure that out. And for fun, I went back and looked it up. And to be clear, there are other teams that have dealt with injuries. Duke has, Villanova has, Arkansas has, Tennessee has. But did you know Kentucky's had 5 different marquee players miss time with injury? Arizona, for example, I'm going to give you an example. You know, Arizona has had 0 rotation players miss a single game because of injury all year. You think that doesn't affect why Arizona's playing really well? Now, they had a guy suspended early in the year, Courtney Ramey, but they haven't missed a single game to injury for a player in their rotation. Purdue has had 1 player miss more than 1 game this season out of their rotation. That's it. UCLA, Amari Bailey's been hurt, but largely everybody else has been available. So I bring it up to say every game it's something new with Calipari, in, out, this, that. Guy gets hurt middle game. He doesn't come back. It's like, can we give him credit for everything? The media is fighting him. His own fan base is fighting him. I'm not saying he's been perfect, but I thought he had a great game on Saturday. I thought I think it's been a solid year for him. I'd give him a B+. It's not great, but it hasn't been easy either. And you win at Arkansas, you win at Tennessee, you beat Auburn at home, you beat Tennessee at home, you beat Texas A&M at home. That's a pretty solid season. You'd like to see it start a little earlier. Michigan State and Gonzaga would have been nice early. I get it. Point I'm trying to make, this guy takes so many arrows. Credit him for getting the win.